At 6:30 hours on July 12, 1943, Unteroffizier Werner Krause scanned the eastern tree line through the optics of his Panzer III, watching dozens of T-70 light tanks emerge behind the advancing wave of T-34s south of Prokhorovka. The 9.2-ton machines, each mounting a 45mm 20K Model 1938 gun in a cramped two-man configuration, spread across the steppe in numbers that made his throat tighten. Across the Central Front alone, Soviet archival records indicate roughly 369 of these vehicles had been positioned, comprising around 22% of Soviet armor. Factory number 38 in Kirov had birthed this peculiar weapon beginning in October 1941, when designer Nikolai Astrov's team modified the T-60 Scout tank hull with two GAZ-202 truck engines delivering 140 horsepower total. By March 6, 1942, the State Defense Committee had rushed the design into production across 3 factories, and by the time Krause's unit rolled toward Prokhorovka, Soviet industry had manufactured 8,226 of them. If you're interested in how wars are actually decided by logistics, math, weapons, and doctrine, subscribe now, turn on notifications, and stay tuned for more in-depth World War II analysis. Let's continue. The T-70 embodied a fundamental paradox that German intelligence officers struggled to parse. In June 1942, 30 T-70 assigned to 21st Army's 4th Panzer Corps had been obliterated within days by 75mm PaK-40 guns, their 15 to 25mm of side armor offering no more resistance than paper against high-velocity shells. At 500 meters, the T-70's gun could penetrate roughly 50mm under ideal conditions, limiting crews to desperate flank shots against Panzer 3 or 4 frontal plates. The commander sat alone in the multi-faced welded turret, manually traversing 360 degrees, while simultaneously loading 45mm rounds, aiming through a PT-1 sight, and commanding his driver, a workload that would break most men within minutes of combat. In one reported case near Voronezh in January 1943, a T-70 commander who had expended all 70 rounds of his reduced ammunition load rammed 2 German tanks and captured a battalion commander through sheer desperation rather than withdraw. Yet the designers at factory number 38 had never intended these machines to duel panzers alone. The T-70 reached 45 km per hour on roads, stood only 2.0 meters tall with 0.30 meters ground clearance, and cost a fraction of the T-34's price in man-hours and rubles. As Krause watched the swarm multiply across his field of view, with several hundred more T-70s accompanying the T-34s of 5th Guards Tank Army held in steppe front reserves, the mathematical reality became clear. These weren't dueling weapons. They were a flood. The radio crackled with static. Inside the steel shell, 5 men worked in practiced synchrony. The gunner's eye pressed against Zeiss optics. German glass ground to tolerances Soviet factories could not match. Radio chatter filled the crew compartment as the commander relayed coordinates, his voice joining a network linking every panzer in the formation. Professional soldiers, each man trained for a single task. The loader swung another round into the breech of the 50mm gun, capable of killing light armor at 1,000 meters, distances where return fire posed little threat. This was engineering translated into battlefield geometry. Germany had built a precision instrument. The Third Reich's armored force reflected industrial culture, specialized labor, quality optics, coordinated communication. Every radio set allowed tactical flexibility. Every crew position divided cognitive load across 5 brains. The mechanical advantage was measurable in penetration tables and coordination speed. Across the steppe, a different calculus governed Soviet production. Between June and December 1941, the Red Army lost an estimated 20,500 tanks. 6 months of catastrophic hemorrhaging that exceeded Germany's entire armored inventory. The exact figure varies among historians, but the scale is beyond dispute. Encirclement swallowed entire mechanized corps. Retreat abandoned repair depots. The arithmetic was existential. Stalin's factories could not replace medium tanks fast enough to match the rate of destruction. Specialized tank plants in Kharkov and Leningrad faced evacuation or capture. Production capacity collapsed precisely when German panzers pressed deepest into Soviet territory. The question reached Moscow in stark terms. What could a truck factory build that kills a panzer? Automobile plants lacked heavy forging presses for thick armor or large turret rings. Their workers assembled gas trucks, not combat vehicles. Their supply chains delivered automotive components, not specialized military steel. Yet these facilities remained operational, dispersed beyond German bomber range. Astrov's team at the Kirov plant confronted constraints that shaped every dimension of their design. 2 truck engines instead of 1 tank engine. Thin armor that rolling mills could handle, a gun borrowed from infantry stocks, a 2-man crew because 3-man turrets required diameter the whole could not accommodate. The light tank emerged not from tactical preference but industrial desperation, a weapon bounded by what automotive tooling could physically produce. Its specifications reflected available materials rather than battlefield requirements. By spring 1942, production lines began delivering machines that traded every element of German professionalism for the single advantage of existence. The factories could build them. More than any other factor, that reality determined their creation. Outside, across open ground, those vehicles now closed distance toward optics that could see them long before their own sights acquired targets. In October 1941, chief designer Nikolai Astrov faced an impossible deadline: 3 months to create a light tank from salvaged truck components while German armor advanced toward Moscow. Gaz. Factory workers who had assembled civilian automobiles days earlier now welded rolled armor plates strengthened with rivets into angular hulls. The solution emerged from desperation. 2 Gaz 202 automobile engines bolted together in tandem, weapon, producing enough power to propel a 9.2-ton vehicle at 45 kilometers per hour across open steppe. The specifications revealed brutal compromises. Against the Panzer, 3 Ausf J/L with its 50mm KBUK 39L/60 gun capable of penetrating approximately 60mm of armor at 500 meters. The T-70 mounted only a 45mm 20K model 1938 gun, achieving roughly 50mm penetration at the same range under ideal conditions. The German tank's turret housed 3 men with Zeiss Turmzielfernrohr, 5F optics, and power traverse. The T-70's turret contained 1. This single crewman, the commander, performed 5 simultaneous tasks without mechanical assistance. He spotted targets through limited vision blocks. He loaded rounds by hand while cramped in a space 2.0 meters high. He aimed the main gun manually, cranking the traverse wheel. He fired both the cannon and coaxial 7.62mm DT machine gun. He directed his driver through shouted commands in a hole thick with engine fumes and cordite smoke. Because most T-7s carried no radio, only command vehicles received sets, and no vehicle possessed an intercom system. Communication occurred through hand signals and screaming over the roar of twin engines. The Panzer III crew coordinated through electrical intercoms, distributed labor across specialized roles, and maintained situational awareness through superior optics. The T-70 commander fought alone in his rotating steel box, switching between loaders' physical strain and gunners' precision while tracking battlefield geometry through narrow slits. Factories selected soldiers of small stature to fit the cramped compartment. During the Battle of Stalingrad, the average survival time of a tank in combat was reported as 24 hours, a figure that applied across all types. And T-70 crews understood they sat near the bottom of those odds. Boot heels hammered on shoulders. Inside the steel coffin, 2 men fought geometry. The commander stood in the turret, shoulders wedged against metal, left hand feeding 45mm shells into the breech while his right traversed the gun manually and his eyes pressed against the sight. Below him, the driver hunched over controls, vision reduced to narrow slits, awaiting direction through a crude communication method that veterans later recalled. Boots kicking shoulders. Left shoulder, turn left. Right shoulder, turn right. Both shoulders, stop. No words penetrated the engine roar, and gun concussion in a space barely 2 meters high, where fumes from twin gas engines mixed with propellant smoke after each shot. This arrangement killed men efficiently. At Prokhorovka, on July 12, 1943, a small number of operational Tigers from 1st SS Panzergrenadier Division reportedly knocked out dozens of Soviet tanks. At long range in the morning fighting, 88mm shells punching through the T-70's maximum 60mm of turret armor as if it were paper. The surviving machines of 29th Tank Corps, dozens of T-7s among roughly 200 total vehicles, closed the distance at 45 kilometers per hour, their crews understanding that standoff range meant death. At point-blank distances, 45mm rounds still bounced harmlessly off Tiger frontal plates, physics rendering courage irrelevant. Yet, inadequate machines sometimes housed extraordinary men. Soviet award narratives describe a T-70 commander who, after expending all ammunition, rammed his vehicle into 2 panzers rather than withdraw, the 9-ton machine becoming a battering ram at terminal velocity. On July 6, 1943, according to Soviet records, a lieutenant of the 49th Guards Tank Brigade, commanding a single T-70, reportedly destroyed several German tanks near Prokhorovka, using flank shots where 45mm penetration became lethal at close range. In another reported case, a T-70 sergeant, serving with 3rd Guards Tank Army in March 1944, concealed his vehicle in foliage and waited as a Panther column approached. At 200 meters, breathing distance in armored warfare, he fired APCR rounds capable of penetrating on the order of 80 to 90 millimeters of armor. One Panther exploded. A second stopped, immobilized. The surviving Germans never located the hidden shooter. These accounts emerged from an estimated 261 T-70s present in the wider Prokhorovka sector, according to Soviet archival analysis, from thousands more across the steppe between 1942 and 1944. Production had ceased in October 1943 after 8,226 units, the chassis repurposed for Su-76M self-propelled guns mounting proper 76.2mm weapons. The 2-man coffins had proven their inadequacy through blood. Some crews had proven something else entirely. Summer 1942 delivered brutal mathematics. The first 30 T-70 rolled into combat and died within days. Their 35mm frontal armor at 60 degrees no match for German 50mm KWK 39 guns that could punch through from 1,000 meters. Crews learned what numbers meant. Each T-70 commander traversed his turret manually through 360 degrees while simultaneously loading and firing the 45mm gun, a one-man operation that turned every engagement into a race against reload time. The engine fumes from twin Gas 203 power plants filled cramped holes as drivers navigated by feel, working their way through smoke and cordite. Stalingrad changed the equation. Urban combat rewarded the T-70's 2-meter height, low enough to lurk in rubble while its 45mm gun worked against infantry and light armor, at ranges where German advantage disappeared. By July 1943 at Prokhorovka, an estimated 261 T-70 SAS charged alongside T-34s into the teeth of every Panzer III equipped with 50mm guns and radios coordinating 5-man crews. The avalanche came anyway. Each German gunner faced the same problem. Every round had to count whether the target carried 35mm armor or 45mm, whether it weighed 10 tons or 30. Ammunition expenditure made no distinction between magnificent and adequate. The factories had already answered. From June 1942 through October 1943, 19 months, truck plants stamped out 8,226 T-7s each carrying 440 liters of gasoline with high fuel consumption typical of gasoline light tanks, on the order of 150 or more liters per 100 kilometers cross-country. Brutal numbers that didn't matter because replacement vehicles arrived faster than crews could burn them. Low ground pressure let them ford streams, cross terrain that bogged heavier machines, appear where German doctrine said light tanks couldn't operate. October 1943 ended T-70 production. The widened hull became Su-76, mounting a 76.2mm gun on the same running gear, over 11,000 more vehicles from the same assembly logic. 53 T-70S went to Poland after the war, 10 to Czechoslovakia, survivors rolling, until 1948, on tracks that had learned a simple truth. Industrial war rewards the side that forces its enemy to spend irreplaceable resources destroying replaceable machines. Werner Krauss and every gunner like him had fired perfect shots at targets that multiplied faster than kill counts, watching through Zeiss optics as the flood rolled forward from that tree line south of Prokhorovka. If you enjoyed this story, hit subscribe for more World War II historical deep dives every week. Thanks for watching.